A reporter with the El Paso Times has written a story, made a suggestion. Well, let me just read for you her phrasing. This is Martha Skowski at the El Paso Times. The agent swung his whip menacingly, charging his horse toward the men in the river who were trying to return to an encampment under the International Bridge in Del Rio after buying food and water in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico. Now, Sikowski is the environmental watchdog reporter at the El Paso Times. She's written for a bunch of left-wing publications, from The Guardian to Vice. She graduated from New York University in 2021 and is apparently pretty ignorant and uncultured. We have a New Yorker going down to Texas to cover the border crisis for the El Paso Times, and she got a horse rein, confused with a whip.
This stuff's made New York City.
New York City!
Yep. Martha Sikowski said that the agent swung his whip menacingly. The agent had in his hands his horse reins, and they are long reins. What are they called? Split reins. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm actually don't know a ton about horse culture, but I know enough to know what this is. When you're out in the wild of the desert and you're on horseback, you have split reins. They allow you to really control the horse from one side or the other with one hand, unlike when you're in the field doing the fancy horse riding stuff, side saddle no less, I'm sure, that Ms. Sikowski is probably familiar with. These long reins, they not only do that, but they allow you to still hold onto the reins even as the horse's neck and head are down, allowing the horse to eat or drink. And the agent, you can see the video, he spins. Now, they've gone from whip today to whip-like cord. It is the reins of the horse, and he spins it out. You never see him actually hit. You never see any of these agents hit anyone. They're spinning them. They're hitting the horse. They're steering the horse. They're maneuvering to block the people. But it has become a massive scandal. The head of Homeland Security had to come out and say that it's not true. This is from the New York Post. Secretary Mayorkas and Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz told reporters in Del Rio, Texas Monday they saw nothing obviously wrong with how the agents acted based on initial viewings of the images and footage. Mayorkas explained the agents used long reins, not whips, to control their horses, while Ortiz cited the difficulty in distinguishing migrants from smugglers as people move back and forth near the river. John Ekdahl, who I know from Twitter, several years ago, I've mentioned this before, it was 2016, I believe, after Trump was elected. He put up a tweet and he said, how many reporters know someone who owns a pickup truck? And instead of a lot of reporters coming out and saying they did or they did not, the Blue Checkmark Brigade on social media began excoriating him for having the audacity to ask a question like that. What nonsense. Who cares? The reason he asked the question is because the top 3 most popular vehicles in the United States are pickup trucks. Number 1 is the Ford F-150. Number 2, the Chevy Silverado. Number 3, the Dodge Ram pickup. Those are the 3 most popular vehicles in this country in 2016 and in 2021. And by the way, there's a Toyota is number 4, I think, and number 5 is the GMC Sierra. I have 3 neighbors in a row here. My neighbor over here is a Chevy Silverado. His son is an F-150. My neighbor next to them, right across from me, is a GMC Sierra. And the neighbor next to him is an older model Ford F-150. I've got a GMC Yukon Denali. I don't have a pickup truck. My father-in-law has a older F-150, a very old F-150. My dad has a Chevy Silverado. My brother-in-law has an F-250. both of the guys who work for me, Philip and Charlie. Philip's got a Nissan pickup truck. Charlie has a GMC or Chevy pickup truck, Silverado. And most major members of the American Press Corps don't know anyone who owns a pickup truck. They live cloistered lives in the Acela corridor where they have mass public transportation, and they don't get out and about. They don't know anyone who owns a pickup truck. They are isolated from real America. And by the way, New York and D.C. are not real America. Someone one time when I pointed that out said that's absurd. It's like saying that Paris isn't France. Charles de Gaulle very famously once said, there is Paris and then there is France. There is the Acela corridor and then there is America. Ryan Riley, a reporter for the Huffington Post, when they were having the riots in Ferguson, Missouri after the Michael Brown situation, he took a picture of foam earplugs, put it on social media, and says, are these rubber bullets? I think they're rubber bullets or some such. He had not seen the earplugs, the standard earplugs that you put in your ears if you're out shooting guns, for example. He's now, by the way, the senior justice reporter for the Huffington Post, writing a book about January 6th. I'm sure it's going to be very objective. So here comes Martha Sikowski of New York City.
This stuff's made New York City.
New York City!
And she writes, the agent swung his whip menacingly, charging his horse towards the men in the river who were trying to return to an encampment under the International Bridge. Her fake news led to scores of Democrats and progressive activists condemning the Border Patrol. Her claims went viral on the internet. Democratic senators, Congress people, critters, they condemned it. The White House condemned it, and on it went. And it wasn't a whip. It was not even as they've now shifted the story to a whip-like cord. It's not even that. It's the split reins of the Border Patrol agent, and he wasn't hitting anyone. And you know, to her credit, Sikowski never claims that they were actually rounding up or beating the immigrants with whips. The rounding up claim came from a Democratic progressive activist named Sawyer Hackett. As best I can tell, he's the executive director of Julian Castro's People First Future. He tweeted, Border Patrol is mounted on horseback, rounding up Haitian refugees with whips, which was not true, is not true. They were not doing it. It is the split rein of the horse that they're on. But these cloistered Democrats in elite areas of the country, they have no recognition of that. They don't know it. They don't recognize it. And so they were able to make a national story. The NBC News, the Associated Press, the Washington Post, CNN, major news outlets all ran with a story that is fake news. Now, remember, they only condemn Republicans for fake news. They only say Republicans do it. They're never guilty of it themselves, even when they are. And here they are, very guilty of doing this. It is fake news. It is not true. And then there's something else to note. The media, these reporters who are outraged, these progressive politicians, they haven't said one damn thing about the border in weeks. For weeks, conservatives have been talking about this. For a week, we've been documenting the mass of humanity crossing the Rio Grande. We were talking about this last week when there were 10,000 people. I was playing you the audio, describing the video. It was all over the weekend. The numbers have swollen to 15, 20,000 people now. We've been talking about it. These reporters and Democrats and progressives chose to say nothing about it until they could put it in an anti-American frame. Until they could condemn the Border Patrol, they chose not to say a thing about it. They chose to pretend it was not happening. They chose to ignore it until they could make it about law enforcement is bad. Law enforcement is racist. Law enforcement is using whips. They did not want to act. They did not want to report. They did not want to show. They did not want to narrate until they could make it about This is just law enforcement's bad and racist. They're using whips on people. It's like the 1800s. It's like slaves. They willfully have chosen to ignore the story until now. And now, at least they're showing people what's actually going on down there, but the framing is decidedly against the authorities, making it look bad, running stories that is legit fake news, legitimately is not true. They are not using whips. They are not rounding up with whips Haitian refugees or immigrants of any kind. They were using the reins on their horse, the split reins on their horse. And in some of the pictures, they're very clearly lashing out to hit the horse, to steer the horse, not to hit the immigrants. If you watch the video, you see they're actually steering their horses. Yeah, there are a couple there that are spinning it, looking menacingly, yeah, but it's not a whip. It's a rein. There's a fundamental difference. And the media chose to lie, to distort, to ignore, to cover up, and now to attack law enforcement yet again. And the real situation here is that a mass pile of people are streaming across the border, some of whom are dying en route, some of whom are being smuggled across as victims of human trafficking, not just to come here for a better life. Some of them think they're coming for a better life. They're actually being steered into sex trafficking by Mexican drug cartels. And they're not reporting that. They don't care about that. They're ignoring all of that. Instead, they choose fake news. Along the way, there's another question we need to get into with all of this. Where is Kamala Harris? Isn't she in charge of this?